The Zilaxians had a problem. Well, several problems if you wanted to get technical about it. Their bones were about as sturdy as wet cardboard, their muscles had the consistency of overcooked noodles, and their skin, let's just say, that a gentle breeze could leave them with bruises. In the grand cosmic comedy of evolution, they'd somehow drawn the shortest possible stick, then probably sprained something trying to pick it up. "Look, there goes another one to the medical bay," sneered Commander Krix of the Voldarian Empire, watching a Zilaxian hobble past, with what appeared to be a pulled muscle from operating a standard door panel. "I swear they're the only species I've ever seen that can get injured by their own shadow." The mockery wasn't even the worst part. The Zilaxians had managed to develop impressive technology despite their physical limitations, but that only seemed to make them more of a joke to the galactic community. Their robot-assisted living spaces and automated everything became the punchline of countless jokes at intergalactic conferences. "Have you heard about the new Zilaxian combat simulator?" A drachnid would start, antenna twitching with barely contained mirth. "It's just footage of them successfully walking down a hallway without getting hurt." The resulting laughter would echo through the conference halls, while Zilaxian representatives tried to shrink into their heavily padded protective suits. The Galactic Council had classified them as a protected species not because of any ecological concerns, but because they genuinely believed the Zilaxians wouldn't survive without special accommodations. Every other species had their moment of glory, their epic tales of conquest or technological achievement. The Zilaxians, they were known for having the galaxy's most comprehensive health insurance system. But desperation has a funny way of breeding determination. After centuries of being the cosmic punching bag, metaphorically of course, actual punching would have been lethal, the Zilaxian High Council made a decision. They needed help, not just to survive, but to thrive. They needed someone to teach them how to turn their weaknesses into strengths. What they needed was a miracle. What they got was humanity. The discovery of Earth was, like most significant Zilaxian achievements, completely accidental. Their long-range sensors, designed to detect potentially hazardous space debris, because even a stray micrometeorite could spell disaster for their ships, picked up something unusual: radio waves carrying what seemed to be entertainment broadcasts about creatures getting hurt in various amusing ways and surviving. "Are you absolutely certain about these readings?" Chief Science Officer Nix asked, their protective exoskeleton whirring as they leaned forward to examine the data. "These beings are deliberately throwing themselves at walls for entertainment?" The discovery prompted the first Zilaxian expedition in centuries. They approached Earth with their usual caution, which meant enough protective shielding to survive a supernova, 3 backup life support systems, and enough medical supplies to stock a small hospital. The humans, to their credit, managed to keep straight faces during the first diplomatic meeting. Almost. Ambassador Chen's lip might have quivered slightly when the Zilaxian delegation had to take a break halfway through their walk from the landing pad to the conference room, but they maintained their composure admirably. "So, let me get this straight," General Thompson said, reviewing the Zilaxian medical records. "Your bones have 1/3 the density of human bones. Your muscles fatigue at roughly 10% of what we'd consider normal exertion, and you bruise if someone looks at you too hard." "That's actually a rather optimistic assessment," Ambassador Locke admitted, adjusting their impact-absorbing chair. "We've had 3 diplomats retire due to repetitive strain injuries from nodding during conversations." The humans' reaction wasn't what they expected. There was no mockery, no barely concealed disdain. Instead, there was something far more terrifying: enthusiasm. "Do you have any idea what this means?" Dr. Rodriguez exclaimed, practically bouncing in her seat. "Your species has achieved space travel, built an advanced civilization, and survived in a hostile galaxy despite these limitations. That's not weakness, that's adaptation taken to an art form." The Zilaxian delegation exchanged nervous glances, their anxiety monitors beeping in harmony. They'd prepared for ridicule, pity, even dismissal. They hadn't prepared for humans looking at their comprehensive list of inadequacies like kids in a candy store. "Think about it," Captain Williams chimed in, spreading holographic battle maps across the conference table. "Every other species relies on brute force. They've never had to think beyond hit it harder. But you've had to outthink every problem you've ever faced, and now..." "Now?" Ambassador Locke asked, dreading the answer. The human grinned and several Zilaxian heart monitors registered dangerous spikes. Now we're going to teach you how to weaponize that creativity. The Zilaxian Medical Association would later record this as the moment their entire species collectively realized they might have made a terrible, wonderful mistake. The arrival of human military advisors to the Zilaxian homeworld caused quite a stir, primarily because the local medical facilities had to be expanded to accommodate all the Zilaxians who fainted from anxiety. The humans had insisted on bringing their own equipment, which led to the first of many culture shocks. "That's your training facility?" Colonel Martinez asked, staring at what looked like a massive bubble wrap factory. The entire Zilaxian military academy was padded within an inch of its life, with impact-absorbing floors, rounded corners, and emergency medical drones hovering every few meters. "We find it helps reduce training-related casualties to only 15% per session," Academy Director Vix explained proudly. The humans exchanged looks that made several nearby Zilaxians nervously check their protective suits' integrity. "Right," Lieutenant Commander Park said, clapping her hands and causing 3 cadets to jump in surprise. "First thing we're going to do is completely revolutionize how you think about combat. Forget everything you know about traditional warfare." "That won't take long," someone muttered from the back. "Our longest battle lasted 12 seconds before we had to call a medical timeout." The humans began by introducing something they called asymmetric warfare, which turned out to be a fancy way of saying fighting dirty. The Zilaxians, who had spent centuries trying to avoid any kind of fighting whatsoever, found this concept both terrifying and strangely liberating. "You don't need to be stronger than your opponent," Master Sergeant Wu explained as drones demonstrated various tactical scenarios. "You need to be smarter, more creative, more willing to think outside the box." "What if the box is safely padded?" asked a concerned cadet. "Then we're going to teach you to turn that padding into a weapon," Wu replied with a grin that made several medical drones activate automatically. The humans' approach was revolutionary. Instead of trying to make the Zilaxians stronger, they worked with their natural tendencies, their advanced automation systems, perfect for coordinated drone swarms, their obsession with safety protocols, ideal for developing containment strategies, their extensive experience with protective equipment, the foundation for revolutionary defensive technologies. "Your species developed inertial dampeners just so you could ride elevators without getting motion sickness," Dr. Thompson pointed out during a strategy session. "Do you realize what that same technology could do if applied to weapon systems?" The results were interesting. The first time a Zilaxian cadet successfully used their personal medical drone to disable a training dummy by overwhelming its sensors with diagnostic scans. The entire class had to take a break to recover from the excitement. 3 supervisors filed for stress leave, but there was no denying the progress. They learned to turn their weaknesses into tactical advantages. Their natural caution made them excellent at detecting potential threats. Their need for extensive life support systems led to unprecedented advances in environmental warfare. Their automated assistance systems evolved into one of the most sophisticated combat drone networks in the galaxy. "You've been thinking about this all wrong," Captain Chen explained to a group of wide-eyed officers. "You saw your reliance on technology as a weakness. But in modern warfare, the ability to fully integrate with and understand complex systems is a strength. You're not disabled, you're post-biological." The Zilaxians began to adapt human military concepts in ways even their teachers hadn't anticipated. Unable to engage in physical combat training, they developed virtual reality systems so advanced that other species would later pay fortunes just to access them. Their tactical algorithms, refined through centuries of calculating the safest way to do everything, proved devastating when repurposed for military applications. "I don't understand," Cadet Zix admitted during one training session, watching their drone swarm execute a perfect containment maneuver. "Why didn't any other species think to help us this way?" "Because," Commander Park replied, "they were too strong to learn to be clever. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all." The day the first Zilaxian successfully completed a combat scenario, albeit from inside a quadruple reinforced command center with backup life support and an on-call medical team, marked a turning point. They hadn't just learned new tactics, they'd learned something far more important: how to turn their perceived weaknesses into unique strengths. The galaxy had dismissed them as fragile, helpless creatures. They were about to learn that with human ingenuity and Zilaxian caution combined, being underestimated was about to become the deadliest weapon of all. The Kraxon raiders couldn't believe their luck when they spotted a Zilaxian transport near the outer rim. Their leader, Captain Drock, actually did a double take when his sensors confirmed the ship's identity, causing his second-in-command to spill his drink in excitement. A Zilaxian vessel, without an escort? Drock laughed, his mandibles clicking in anticipation. This isn't even going to be a raid. It's more like mandatory charitable donation collection. As they moved to intercept, none of the raiders noticed anything unusual about the transport's erratic movement pattern. If anything, it seemed perfectly normal for a Zilaxian ship to be wobbling through space like it was being piloted by someone having a panic attack. "Attention, Zilaxian vessel," Drock broadcasted, trying to sound intimidating while holding back chuckles. "Prepare to be boarded. Try not to hurt yourselves surrendering." The response they received was unexpected. Silence. Not even the usual immediate capitulation followed by requests for gentle boarding procedures and medical assistance. "They're not even responding." Drock's second-in-command scratched his armored head. "That's different." Different became bizarre when their sensors detected the transport's life support systems powering down. The raiders watched in confusion as the Zilaxian ship appeared to suffer a cascade of system failures, drifting helplessly in space. They're having a mechanical failure." Drock blinked, all four eyes in succession. "Did we actually manage to frighten them into breaking their own ship?" The raiders moved closer, their smugness turning to confusion when their own ship systems began acting strangely. Environmental controls went haywire. Navigation computers started calculating routes to non-existent destinations. The artificial gravity fluctuated like a malfunctioning yo-yo. "What's happening?" Drock demanded, clinging to his command chair as his crew floated past. "Why are our systems—" That's when they noticed the swarm. Hundreds of what appeared to be Zilaxian medical drones had surrounded their ship, while they were distracted by the transport's apparent distress. Each drone was broadcasting medical diagnostic signals at frequencies that played havoc with their ship's sensors and systems. The raiders' last clear memory was of their ship's computer cheerfully announcing, "External diagnostic complete, initiating emergency quarantine protocols." When the Galactic Council received the incident report, several representatives required medical assistance themselves, though in their case, it was from choking on their drinks. The Kraxon raiders, notorious terrors of the Outer Rim, had been captured without a single shot fired. Their ship systems had been completely overwhelmed by what appeared to be an aggressive automated healthcare protocol. "Let me get this straight," Council Member Zarthos wheezed, still coughing up his premium nutrient slurry. "The Zilaxians defeated hardened raiders using malfunctioning medical equipment." The human military advisor present simply shrugged. "The best defense is a good offense. The best offense is the one your enemy never sees coming, and nobody ever suspects the medical drones." The Zilaxian representative added somewhat proudly, "We also provided the raiders with excellent healthcare during their capture and detention. 3 of them had undiagnosed conditions we were able to treat. They're now significantly healthier prisoners than they were free raiders." That first victory changed everything. The galaxy had just learned that the Zilaxians had developed an entirely new form of warfare, one where the most dangerous ships were the ones that looked like they could barely stay airborne, and the most lethal weapons were the ones designed to heal. The age of aggressive healthcare had begun. The transformation of Zilaxian military doctrine was something that tactical historians would later describe as brilliantly inevitable, though mostly because no one could think of a professional way to say hilariously terrifying. Their first innovation came from an unexpected source, their notorious bureaucracy. Centuries of documenting every possible way a Zilaxian could get injured had created the galaxy's most comprehensive risk assessment system. When applied to military operations, it became a predictive engine of unprecedented accuracy. "Your threat assessment algorithms are basically paranoia mathematized," Dr. Thompson explained during a strategic review. "You've quantified anxiety. Do you realize how powerful that is?" The Zilaxians had indeed created something unique. Their combat systems didn't just predict enemy actions. They calculated 17 different ways any given situation could go catastrophically wrong. and prepared contingencies for each scenario, including several that most species wouldn't even consider possible. "Sir," a Drachnid commander would later report to his superior, "the Zilaxian defense fleet, they retreated before we even attacked." "Ha! Cowards!" "No, sir, they retreated because their systems predicted we would attack. They had evacuated the entire sector and left behind automated defense systems calibrated specifically to our weapons. We literally flew into a trap they set before they knew we were coming." Their medical technology underwent an equally dramatic evolution. Zilaxian healing pods, originally designed to treat their numerous daily injuries, were modified into deployment systems for nanobots that could disable enemy ships from the inside out. Their emergency response protocols became the foundation for military-grade AI that could adapt to threats faster than organic commanders could issue orders. "We're not designing weapons," Chief Engineer Lox explained to a panel of human advisors. "We're creating systems that ensure everyone's safety by temporarily inconveniencing those who threaten it." "You developed a drone that turns enemy ship corridors into padded cells," Captain Chen pointed out. "Exactly, very safe. No one gets hurt." Their obsession with protective equipment spawned an entire new class of defensive technologies. Zilaxian ships became notorious for their layered defense systems, which one frustrated pirate described as trying to punch through a series of increasingly passive-aggressive force fields that keep politely suggesting you seek therapy. The pinnacle of their innovation came in the form of what they called preventative peacekeeping protocols, a combination of predictive algorithms, automated defense systems, and what could only be described as weaponized risk assessment. "The genius of it," General Thompson explained to a bewildered Galactic Council, "is that their entire military strategy is based on preventing fights rather than winning them. They've turned conflict avoidance into an offensive capability. Their ships were designed to appear vulnerable, suspiciously vulnerable. Enemy vessels approaching with hostile intent would find their targeting systems confounded by what appeared to be structural weaknesses, only to discover they were being herded into optimal positions for the Zilaxians' automated defense networks. The Zilaxian combat meditation chambers, formerly known as anxiety management pods, became standard issue for their commanders. These allowed them to interface directly with their ship's systems, processing battlefield information through the lens of their species' highly evolved survival instincts. "It's not fear," Commander Vix insisted during a tactical briefing. "It's extremely well-informed caution, quantified and weaponized. They even managed to turn their notorious physical weakness into an advantage." Zilaxian ships were designed with systems so sensitive that no other species could operate them without triggering safety protocols. Their control interfaces required such a delicate touch that attempted hijackers would typically trigger emergency lockdowns before they could even figure out how to disengage the safety restraints. The humans watched their students' evolution with a mixture of pride and amazement. The Zilaxians hadn't just adapted human military principles, they'd created an entirely new paradigm of warfare based on anticipating and preventing conflict rather than engaging in it. "You've basically weaponized safety regulations," Lieutenant Commander Park observed, watching a demonstration of their latest defensive system. "Not exactly," Chief Strategist Nix corrected. "We've bureaucratized combat. The enemy doesn't just have to defeat our defenses. They have to fill out the proper forms in triplicate, submit a risk assessment, and schedule their attack at least 3 cycles in advance." The galaxy was learning a valuable lesson. There was nothing more dangerous than a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to avoid danger. The Zilaxians hadn't just developed a new way of fighting. They'd turned their entire evolutionary history of running away into a military asset. The Kraxon Empire had ruled the outer sectors for millennia through the time-honored tradition of being bigger, stronger, and considerably more prone to violence than everyone else. When they announced their intention to integrate Zilaxian space into their territory, most of the galaxy prepared to send condolence cards. Supreme Warmaster Grokmar of the Kraxon fleet was having a wonderful day. He had his favorite conquest music playing on the bridge, his lucky skull-crushing gauntlet freshly polished, and a speech prepared about the natural order of the strong dominating the weak. "My lord," his censor officer reported, "the Zilaxian response to our ultimatum has arrived." "Excellent. Let me guess, unconditional surrender with a request for gentle occupation forces and on-site medical teams." Actually, sir, it's a 347-page document detailing why our invasion would be inadvisable, complete with cost-benefit analyses, environmental impact studies, and psychological counseling recommendations. The War Master's triumphant smile faltered slightly. What? They've also included a comprehensive insurance liability waiver, which they're requiring all invasion forces to sign before entering their space, in triplicate. The invasion proceeded anyway because if there's one thing the Kraxon Empire wasn't going to do, it was back down because of paperwork. Their mighty armada entered Zilaxian space in perfect formation, weapons charged, ready to demonstrate why they were the dominant species in the sector. The first sign that something was amiss came when their advanced scouts reported that all Zilaxian worlds appeared to be completely undefended. No ships, no orbital platforms, not even traffic control stations, just automated beacons broadcasting safety warnings in 47 different languages. This is clearly a trap, Grokmar's tactical officer suggested. Of course it's a trap, the War Master snorted. But what can they possibly do? They're Zilaxians. The answer came when their fleet approached the first Zilaxian colony world. Their sensors detected what appeared to be a catastrophic environmental system failure on the planet. Emergency broadcasts filled their communications channels, warning of imminent atmospheric contamination and requesting immediate assistance. They're having a planetary systems failure right as we arrive to conquer them, Grokmar's second-in-command asked incredulously. That's convenient? Before anyone could ponder this coincidence further, the fleet's artificial gravity systems began to fluctuate. Navigation computers started displaying error messages about unsafe operating conditions. Life support systems initiated emergency protocols for no apparent reason. Status report, Grokmar demanded, clinging to his command throne as artificial gravity cycled through what felt like a complete randomization sequence. My lord, our systems are being diagnosed. Something is accessing our environmental controls through our safety protocols. We're being quarantined. The Zilaxian counterattack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Swarms of medical drones surrounded Kraxon ships, overwhelming their systems with diagnostic signals. Automated repair stations appeared out of seemingly nowhere, latching onto vessels and initiating emergency maintenance procedures that coincidentally shut down all weapons systems. The Kraxon's notorious berserker squadrons found their neural stimulants replaced with calming agents by overzealous medical protocols. Entire battle groups were redirected to designated safe zones by navigation systems that suddenly decided their original course was too hazardous. How are they doing this? Grokmar raged as his flagship systems methodically shut down anything deemed potentially unsafe, which apparently included everything except life support and the entertainment channels. The answer came from his communications officer. Sir, apparently our safety protocols were all based on Zilaxian design standards. They wrote the original code that everyone's been using for centuries. The true genius of the Zilaxian defense became clear. They hadn't just prepared for this invasion. They'd been preparing for it for generations. Every safety protocol, every automated system, every piece of medical technology they'd ever shared with the galaxy had been building toward this moment. The coup de grace came when the Zilaxian defense network finally revealed itself. What had appeared to be abandoned worlds were actually vast automated defense systems disguised as civilian infrastructure. Every medical facility was a drone control center. Every safety monitor was part of a massive sensor network. Attention Kraxon fleet, the message went out across all frequencies. You have entered a Level 1 safety exclusion zone without proper certification or risk assessment documentation. As per Galactic Safety Regulation 247B, subsection 12, paragraph 9, your entire fleet has been placed under automated quarantine, pending full systems inspection and crew psychological evaluation. When the dust settled, the mighty Kraxon invasion fleet found itself effectively imprisoned by its own safety systems, surrounded by swarms of extremely concerned medical drones, and subjected to what one traumatized officer would later describe as the most passive-aggressive peacekeeping operation in galactic history. The final insult came when the Zilaxians filed an official complaint with the Galactic Council, not about the invasion attempt, but about the Kraxon's reckless disregard for basic safety protocols and failure to maintain proper documentation. The Kraxon Empire, terror of the outer sectors, was defeated not by weapons of war, but by weaponized workplace safety regulations. Their mighty warships were brought low not by battle damage, but by citing them for thousands of health code violations. You have to admit, Human Ambassador Chen later remarked to the Council, watching the Kraxons sign peace treaties that looked suspiciously like liability waivers, there's something poetic about the galaxy's most aggressive species being defeated by the galaxy's most risk-averse one. The Zilaxian representative merely adjusted their safety harness and replied, "We didn't defeat them. We simply helped them achieve compliance with galactic safety standards, rather forcefully." The galaxy's perception of the Zilaxians underwent a radical shift following the Kraxon incident. Species that had once mockingly offered to bubble wrap entire Zilaxian colonies were now sending diplomatic delegations to learn their secrets, though most of these diplomats had to first pass extensive safety certifications and sign multiple liability waivers. "Fascinating," a Voldarian military attaché muttered, watching a demonstration of Zilaxian drone swarm tactics. "They've turned their entire civilization's worth of safety protocols into the galaxy's most sophisticated defense network." The Galactic Council's annual military technology conference, once a source of endless humiliation for Zilaxian representatives, became standing room only during their presentations, though this was partly because the Zilaxians insisted on maintaining strict occupancy limits for safety reasons. "The true brilliance," Admiral Krix admitted, the same one who had once mocked their tendency to get injured by shadows, "is that we all help build their defense system without realizing it. Every time we adopted their safety protocols or medical standards, we were basically installing their command codes in our systems." The Zilaxian Military Academy, still thoroughly padded and equipped with enough medical drones to staff a small hospital, began receiving applications from other species. The entrance exam included a 1,000-page safety orientation and required all candidates to demonstrate proficiency in emergency first aid, risk assessment, and passive-aggressive diplomatic correspondence. "Remember," Instructor Vix told a class of mixed-species cadets, "the most effective military strategy is one where your enemy defeats themselves while you maintain plausible deniability and proper documentation." The humans, for their part, couldn't have been prouder of their allies. The Human-Zilaxian Defense Pact became one of the most formidable alliances in known space, combining human adaptability with Zilaxian over-preparation in ways that gave military strategists nightmares. "It's a perfect partnership," General Thompson explained during a council briefing. "We think outside the box, they carefully document all the ways that box could potentially cause injury, and together we turn those documentation requirements into tactical advantages." Zilaxian technology became highly sought after, though not always for the reasons they intended. Their automated medical systems, designed to detect and treat the slightest injury, were discovered to make excellent infiltration detection networks. Their risk assessment algorithms proved exceptional at predicting enemy movements, mainly because they automatically assumed everything that could go wrong would go wrong. "We've received another technology exchange request," Commander Lox reported during a staff meeting. "The Drachnid Empire wants to license our emergency response protocols. The same Drachnids who used to joke about us being able to get concussions from harsh language?" "Yes, though according to our records, they've filed all the proper paperwork this time, in triplicate." The greatest change, however, was in how other species treated Zilaxian representatives. The sight of a Zilaxian in their characteristic protective gear no longer prompted stifled laughter. Instead, it caused military officers to nervously check their ship's safety certification status. "You know what's truly ironic?" a human diplomatic advisor remarked during the 10th anniversary of the Human-Zilaxian alliance. "Everyone used to think their obsession with safety was their greatest weakness. Turns out, being prepared for absolutely everything to go wrong makes you incredibly good at making things go wrong for everyone else." The Zilaxian response to their new status was characteristically cautious. They established the Galactic Safety and Strategic Defense Institute, which quickly became known for producing both the galaxy's most thorough military strategies and its most comprehensive workplace safety guidelines. "We haven't really changed," High Commander Nix explained during a press conference, safely ensconced in their quadruple redundant protective podium. "We're still the same safety-conscious, risk-averse species we've always been. We've just helped the rest of the galaxy understand that sometimes the best defense is a really, really well-documented defense. Looking back, the transformation of the Zilaxian species from galactic punchline to military innovators read like someone's improbable fever dream, though the Zilaxians would insist on calling it a carefully documented progression of strategic evolution with appropriate safety measures in place. Their new role as teachers came with its own amusing ironies. The same species that once couldn't attend diplomatic functions without risk of injury were now instructing elite military units from across the galaxy, though their training programs did require students to sign unprecedented amounts of safety waivers and undergo mandatory health screenings. The greatest lesson we learned from humans, Grand Strategist Vix explained during a graduation ceremony at the Galactic Defense Academy, wasn't how to be strong. It was understanding that true strength comes in recognizing what others see as weaknesses and turning them into advantages. Also, proper documentation. Always maintain proper documentation. The human influence on Zilaxian culture became legendary, though not always in ways anyone expected. Their joint military exercises became famous throughout the galaxy, combining human unpredictability with Zilaxian over-preparation in ways that gave their enemies headaches and their insurance providers panic attacks. Perhaps the most fitting testament to their journey came in the form of the new Galactic Military Archives category, Aggressive Risk Mitigation Strategies. It was a section filled with tales of battles won not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through weaponized workplace safety regulations and combat-grade insurance policies. As one human instructor was fond of telling their students, the Zilaxians taught the galaxy that the species you should fear most isn't the strongest or the most aggressive, it's the one that spent its entire existence planning for everything that could possibly go wrong and figured out how to make it go wrong for everyone else instead.